What is happening here? This is like the 5-second rule aviation edition where if you don't land on the runway, but you get there within 5 seconds, it still counts as an acceptable landing. Viral Debrief, Episode 1. Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 Gear is all about aviation. People often send me viral aviation videos from YouTube or other places and ask me to explain them. So I thought, alright, I'm just going to take them all, put them together in one video, and we'll break them all down. If you end up pursuing aviation as a career, at the end of a flight when you're in training, they'll do what's called a debrief. They'll go over what you did well and what you did bad, things you can improve on, all those types of things. So what I'm doing in this series is I'm taking viral aviation videos and we're breaking them down, or debriefing them. If you have an aviation video that you want to see in Viral Debrief, go ahead and send it to me. Now, you can't link it on YouTube in the comment section because it will go into this massive spam folder that I'll never see. The easiest thing to do is go to my Instagram account, copy the link, send it there, and if you want to make my life easy, and please do that, just tell me what time the video actually starts. Alright, let's check out this first video. What is happening here? This is like the 5-second rule aviation edition where if you don't land on the runway, but you get there within 5 seconds, it still counts as an acceptable landing. No big deal, nothing happened. Totally normal landing, totally normal. By no means am I a quick learner. When I went through flight school, I took a long time to learn a lot of different things. It looks like he stalled off the side of the runway just by the way he falls. Like he got slow, didn't do anything to get back on the runway, and then just fell out of the sky a few feet above the ground. Look at kind of the way the wings are as he comes down. But he made it back to the center line as fast as he could, so you have to give some credit to the pilot for doing that. I've told you in some of the videos in the past that aviation is a humbling experience. There are going to be a lot of times that you're going to feel very stupid as you go through flight school. It doesn't matter who you are. It can be a humbling experience. You might do very well in one section and struggle in another section. Someone else may be the exact opposite of you. But there's an old saying, a smart man learns from his own mistakes and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And that's exactly what we're doing in this Viral Debrief series. Something you'll learn as you go through flight school is that you can always go around, and that's essentially what this pilot should have done in this scenario. He wasn't anywhere close to the runway. It looks like he stalled one of his wings. It ended up just plopping onto the ground, but he was able to make it onto the runway. Plane seems like it's okay. It's operating fine. His flight instructor, if he saw that, is probably going to ask him what happened, and I'm guessing the plane's going to need an inspection. There's never a reason to land off of a runway like that. If it doesn't look good, go around and try it again. Ooh, so close. Oh, and he bounced it. Hard to know exactly what the pilot was thinking in this situation, but they obviously realized they were getting very low. It's also hard for me to be critical of a fighter pilot here because I know that if it was me, I would have gone inverted because, do it for the gram, and that's probably why I never got invited to fighter pilot flight school. You see these lights here? They're used by the pilots for vertical path guidance. It's just another tool to help us get where we want to land on the runway. It'll give you a descent path so you land in the touchdown area of the runway. Obviously, he's ignoring those, but those are on the runway to help him out, so I'm not sure why he was so low. And then you can see him right here bouncing down the runway. So it looks like he got low and then gave some extra power to make it to the runway, which is obviously important. Then he came in flat and fast, and that's probably why you see him bouncing. A bounce landing can be caused by a few different things, but the most common that you'll experience as you go through flight school is pulling back the power when you're too high. When you pull it back too high, the energy runs out and then the plane slams onto the ground and bounces back up in the air. So that's the most common. What you have to focus on is getting better at power management so you can keep some power in as you get onto the runway. Oh yeah, I remember seeing this actually right after it came out. No. Go around. Go around. Oh. There are a few points to discuss here. First, you see him here to the left of the center line. You can see the center line right here, which means he isn't even in the middle of the runway right now. That's not a massive issue by itself, but he hasn't even touched down yet and he isn't correcting. I'm guilty of this as well, landing way off the center line. I know when I went through flight school, it seemed like it took me 100 hours before I could constantly maintain center line on my landing.
Actually, that would not surprise me.
I think I always used to land on the left. It's just something that takes some practice and some confidence to make sure you're always able to keep it going right down the middle of the runway. Now here in the yoke, you can see him start putting in correction to get back toward the middle of the runway. But at these slow speeds, the ailerons, which are used to direct the plane, don't have that much of an impact because there's not a lot of air going over the wing. Then he starts heading off into the woods here. I actually had a landing like this in flight school. It was a very narrow runway. I think it was in Napa. It was a small runway in Napa. And we landed and we were right towards the edge of the runway. And instead of trying to save it like this guy did, I just gave it full power and got back up in the air and came back and tried it again. So it's definitely something that happens to everybody, and it just has to be that judgment. Doesn't look good, go around. Which is what he should have done here when he lands. He isn't even pointing down the runway. Look, he's pointing to the side here. You never want to see your aircraft in a 90-degree angle unless you're a fighter pilot or in some type of acrobatic plane. Also, your first thought shouldn't be, what happened to my GoPro? And pointing at the grass at that angle, he's definitely going to exceed the well-established 5-second rule that we established in the first video. At the end of the day, being a pilot comes down to good decision making. All of these happen and that's fine. People make mistakes. I know that I've made some. I've never gone into the grass like that, but people make mistakes and sometimes it's just the situation is worse than others. That I can understand. I do have to question, however, taking that video footage from your GoPro and posting it on the internet. That is a little harder for me to understand. I love the car. I love the car going down there. Yeah, no big deal, just driving down the road. All normal. It looks like the pilot's trying to take off way below the speed he's supposed to take off at. So he's either too slow or he's too heavy or both. You see here how the nose is up really high? At that angle, the plane is never going to be able to climb because it doesn't have enough power to actually get off the ground. I've talked about this in past videos, but in all planes, whether you're flying a small 172 or a 747, you're going to want to pull back a little bit so the plane actually will get up in the air, but then you want to let it fly itself off the ground. You don't ever want to jerk it off the ground or pull it so far back that aerodynamically it's never going to climb, which is exactly what's happening here. You don't ever need to yank the plane off the ground. If you need to yank it off the ground, there's something wrong. Obviously, in a situation where there's an emergency or you need to get it off the ground, that might be the very, very small percentile that you need to do it. But in some cases, if you pull it back too far, you're going to end up in this exact situation. So this poor plane and the innocent car never had a chance. Gear up. Throw the gear up. I think that was a wing strike. Put the gear up. Clearly this is a stiff crosswind landing, and if you aren't familiar, a crosswind landing means the wind's not coming right down the runway, it's coming from the side, which just means it's a more challenging landing for the pilots. The wind is coming from the left side. As the plane comes into the frame, you can see the pilot kick the rudder right here. They straighten out the plane. With very strong winds like this, when you're in a jet, you want to wait until you're closer to the ground to bring the tail around. I try to make it 10 feet or less to prevent this exact situation from happening. I should say I made this exact same mistake as a pilot on the 747 and other planes I've had in the past, but more on the 747. I had something very similar to this happen probably my first month flying the plane. I didn't let the wind get underneath my wing. I had the wing correction in, but I did kick the rudder too soon and it pushed us towards the side of the runway. So something similar to this has happened to me. I ended up landing on the runway fine. I was a little off the center line, which on a 747 matters more just because of the width of the aircraft. But it is something that happens to all pilots. Nobody's perfect. It's just something we're going to learn from. The wind is coming from the left. The pilot puts his foot on the rudder too early. Because he's so high off the ground, the upwind wing here is getting a lot more air under it. And if you don't correct for it, which is what the pilot doesn't do, that wing gets lifted up, possibly from a gust of wind, which then is blowing the right wing down here and then pushing him off the edge of the runway. which leads to an overcorrection and possibly a wing strike again on this left wing here. And then you can see them forgetting to put the gear up. Clearly, they were a bit frazzled with everything that was going on and possibly hitting the wingtip. It's totally understandable. There have been many pilots in a go-around or in a crazy situation that forget to do something like that. The first thing you want to do is be flying the plane, but you're going to want to put the gear up because it's going to climb a lot better with the gear up. If you want to see an aviation movie with extremely questionable decision making, check out the Hollywood versus reality that I did on American Made, starring Tom Cruise. If you haven't seen that movie, I'll put a link to it right here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.